All right, we got Todd in here. We got him all set up. Todd, welcome to our podcast. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's nice to finally meet you in person. Put
You
a
too.
put a face to the voice. So we're just gonna ask you some questions, keep it informal, and yeah, we'll see where it takes us. So, first question: why did you become a nurse?
um, just kind of hit that point in my life. I needed to make some changes, and uh, everything kind of lined up and fell into it. Worked out great.
Awesome, awesome. And
Good.
now the big one too that that I would see is being a male nurse in a predominantly or historically female dominated environment. Have you struggled with that, or I mean, have you had to work harder being a male nurse, or I mean, tell us about that.
I would say on my day to day, it's actually been great. You know, the girls that I do work with, they've all been very helpful. With with the unit that I normally work in, it's always a little bit, odd to see a guy in a NICU setting, but the girls there have been great. Every once in a while, you kind of run into like the gender issue, taking care of moms, and I completely understand that. And we find ways to work around it. So
Yeah, yeah, that was leads right into the next question was I know being your recruiter, we've certainly had that issue with with the floating requirement that comes with most assignments and dealing with that. But why NICU? Like what drew you into that specialty?
it wasn't my initial plan when I first started school. Um, Towards the end of graduation, like five or six things all kind of lined up. I had an interview even before I took my NCLEX. They were pretty desperate for nurses. So I got in there and, hit the ground running and haven't looked back. It's been great.
Awesome.
It's kind of like a hidden gem. Like, most people are like a guy NICU,
Yeah.
but
I
you
remember
know,
with the first time we talked, I was like telling I think Paul and Tom, I was like, just got off the phone with a male NICU nurse. Like, what male NICU? What are you talking about? And like, no, you didn't. I was like, I did. So I mean, it's certainly it's rare. You're the only male NICU nurse that I had know that I talked to. So that's cool. I really like that you're in that specialty, and it's definitely unique. Paul, I'm sure you've got a question
Yeah.
or two.
Yeah, I mean, that's great that you're not running into many objections, especially being, if you ever have to float to postpartum or, and so, I mean, that could be
yeah.
quite different. And I was actually having this conversation with one of my other nurses the other night and told him that we're going to have a male NICU nurse on the show. And she's like, well, what's the difference with a gyne doctor? It's like, well, that's a good question,
I that gets thrown out a lot, but surprisingly, there's a difference between an MD and a nurse,
Yep.
and
It's just title.
it's amazing that the discrepancy with that. But
Yeah.
you
It
know,
shouldn't be like that, but
eh, if that's the only thing I have to worry about, I'm good.
good. Well, and on your traveling, what is the best part of traveling for you?
um, Getting out and seeing different places more than just a couple days. Like I lived in Ohio all my life, so getting out to I was in Seattle and then went to Monterey and now Colorado
Nice.
Springs. It's a great way to visit the states, spend a little bit extra time to find those hidden restaurants or those hidden places to go, and just maybe look where I'm gonna retire at someday.
Nice. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that being from South Dakota. So that's different being out here in Denver.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite restaurant that you found?
Yeah, what's the best hidden gem for
Um,
restaurants that you found?
there, I think it was called the Mountain Cafe. It was just a couple miles from St. Francis Hospital. Best breakfast I've ever had, and they have these huge pancakes. I mean, it's the size of a pizza.
Wow.
Definitely recommend you if you're ever there in the morning, hit it up for
In the
breakfast.
Springs,
This
right?
is
Yes.
yeah,
Nice. Oh yeah, we'll have to check that
awesome.
out.
Any other like gems that you found, in Seattle or Monterey, like activities? Like what'd you do for fun on? I know we were talking before when we first walked in about fly fishing in Colorado. What other activities do you like doing, or just finding time outside of the hospital?
When I was up in Seattle, I spent a lot of time going up to the Cascades, hiked a couple of the mountaintop lakes, went fly fishing there. Went down to Monterey, I ended up getting to Big Sur a couple times down to Pfeiffer Beach and I think it was Mackaway Falls. Totally different scenery than Ohio, which
Yeah.
was awesome. Tried surfing in Monterey, so wasn't expecting to do that in January, but the weather
Yeah.
was quite pleasant. So,
Perfect.
Don't they have like a different winter summer schedule in Monterey or something weird?
I'm not too familiar with it exactly. I know that they got like a record amount of rainfall this winter, and I mean, I just miss, I guess, all the springtime like blooms everywhere. Kind of miss that, but winter in Monterey was much better than winter in Ohio.
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
I bet.
Yeah. So now I know we've talked about this and kind of the struggles of being a traveler and advice. Now that you've got a few assignments under your belt, you're on just wrapped up your third assignment, headed into your fourth in a few weeks. Knowing kind of what you know now, what advice, or even better, if you go back in time and talk to yourself before we started talking, or even before you took that first assignment, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Um, well, come up with a system to get organized. Just trying to keep all the paperwork, your certificates, just everything for work. It really, I don't have an office. My car is sometimes my office, so trying to get all that straightened out can be challenging. But going into my fourth assignment, I definitely can get it done a lot quicker.
Awesome. So I kind of want to step back talking. I mean, we were talking about NICU earlier, and every time I talk to a NICU nurse, it's just, I think that would be one of the hardest specialties next to peds oncology,
Yeah.
just sick babies. I mean, how do you, I mean, spiritually, do you handle that? Was it a learning curve that you had to, or what advice would you give to a nurse coming out of nursing school that wants to get in NICU?
The learning curve was uh, huge. I went into it with man hands. All the girls that I worked with when I first started, they said, just keep with it. You will get it. And the training, I think, was 3 months just in orientation. So, I mean, it was
Oh, wow.
long.
Wow.
The first 6 months was rough. I remember making a comment to a couple friends, like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make this cut or not. But I kept with it, and things do get better. It's just don't be afraid to ask questions. Be observant of everything, and push through it.
And like now, again, fourth assignment. What do you find like transitions from hospital to hospital? Is there a different learning curve at each facility you go to? Are things drastically different on the units, or is it pretty like streamlined?
It really depends on the facility. A lot of it can be streamlined. Overall, the core set of care that we provide is pretty much uniform, but every facility kind of has their own limits or guidelines that if you're talking about a kid with bilirubin jaundice, they might have different parameters. So you going from one hospital to another, it gets a little confusing to keep all of those numbers straight.
Right.
But overall, the girls that I've worked with have been great. They, ask a question, they've always been helpful. So as long as you stick with the core concept of the cares that you provide and try to follow the facility guidelines, it's not too bad.
What about orientations? Tell us a little bit about. I know you and I have talked about this, but again, just want to give our listeners some advice on what to expect with a typical orientation. And you've got 3 under your belt now, so
Again, that really just depends on each facility. When I was in Seattle, they had no unit manager. There was really no type of management at all. So it was really kind of thrown together and rushed. Here in Colorado Springs, they put us through a full week of orientation that all of their normal staff would go through. So overall, the transition was pretty easy here. It's really just, you got to get through that first week or so, find your footing, and you find out who you can talk to and get good information from and go from there.
Awesome. Paul, what do you got?
Oh man, with traveling, you've got 4 assignments underneath your belt now.
3.
3, and you where are you going to next now?
Fresno,
California. Let's what about housing? How have you overcome housing?
You've always found housing. You found housing in Monterey.
That's one of the biggest hurdles of travel nursing. How do I find cheap housing?
Especially first time
know,
traveler. I mean,
yes.
you found it. You jumped right into it. So
Yeah.
tell us that.
That's been the hardest aspect because I don't want to find housing until I have a contract from the hospital. But normally when that happens, you have such a small window. So I've had pretty good luck using Airbnb. Cheap housing is not really there, but at least if you get something through Airbnb, you have an idea of what you're going to be living or what environment you're going to be in, where you can get like a stock kitchen. I like to cook.
Yeah.
So that definitely helps. But when I came to Colorado Springs, I almost got taken by a scam. Found out last minute. So I avoided that. But Airbnb at least is
secure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but it's definitely difficult.
Yeah, I actually had one of my nurses get scammed on Craigslist. It was just kind of like, stay away from Craigslist.
Yeah.
The hardest thing that I found, because I work nights, is finding a place that doesn't have a dog on the premises. I love dogs, but not after, a horrible night and 3 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
It gets difficult.
Yeah. Well, good.
Todd, is there anything you want to tell us? Favorite thing about travel nursing, worst thing about travel nursing, best experience, worst experience, best advice you could give to new travelers?
That's a lot of questions.
Pick one.
It took me a long time to really make that final step and to get into it. Now I've been gone since last, August. It's been great. I definitely would do it again. I wish I would have done it sooner. That's kind of one of the things that everybody says.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as advice, ask questions, get to know other travelers. Everybody, word of mouth travels fast. There's, I think, a Facebook group for traveling nurses and everything. And just find a system to get organized and pack light.
Awesome. Yeah, we will do a podcast on that, on staying organized, tips and tricks from the recruiting side. Packing cells for backpacks I found worked well. But as a new dad, I've got a sweet joke for you guys. So I'm practicing my dad jokes. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
HIPAA.
HIPAA who?
I can't tell you that. Here all week.
All right. Well, that wraps up our show for today. Again, thanks for tuning in, guys.
Todd, thanks for coming in.
Yes,
to
thank you so much, Todd.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And again, if you'd like to get in touch with us, send us an email at bedsidemanners@gowithadvanced.com. Each episode's show notes are available on our website at gowithadvanced.com/bedside manners. Special thanks to Jonathan Corry for helping produce this episode and Aiden Dykes for the music and editing. And of course, each episode is powered by Advanced Travel Nursing. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.